Hello there, and welcome to the Timeless Historian channel. Tonight we begin with something primal. We're going back, way back, to a time before cities, before agriculture, before your morning coffee even existed as a concept. We're talking about our prehistoric ancestors, the people we casually call cavemen, though most of them didn't actually live in caves full time. These were Homo sapiens during the Paleolithic era, roughly 300,000 to 12,000 years ago, and their daily routine would absolutely destroy you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Chapter 1. Dawn in the Stone Age. Welcome to approximately 30,000 BCE. You've just woken up, and immediately you realize you've made a terrible mistake by being born in this era. There's no alarm clock, no gentle sunrise peeking through curtains, no snooze button. You wake up because you're cold, because something is poking into your back, or because you heard a sound outside that might be a predator. Congratulations, your anxiety has an evolutionary purpose now. Your bed is the ground. Maybe you've got some animal hides underneath you if your group had a successful hunt recently. Maybe you've piled up some dried grass or leaves. But mostly you're sleeping on dirt and rocks, and your spine knows it. Every morning is a full body diagnostic test. Does your shoulder work? How about that hip? Great. Now do it all again tomorrow for the next 40 years, assuming you live that long. The shelter you're in might be a cave, but more likely it's a temporary structure made of branches, animal skins, and desperate hope. Caves were actually pretty rare and usually occupied by animals that were much better at fighting than you were. Most prehistoric humans built lean-tos, windbreaks, or hide-covered frameworks near water sources. These structures were not weatherproof. When it rained, you got wet. When it was cold, you froze. When it was hot, you baked. Climate control was not a feature. It was a distant fantasy that wouldn't be realized for another 28,000 years. You're sharing this space with your entire family group, maybe 15 to 30 people, all sleeping within touching distance. Privacy is a concept that won't be invented until humans have enough resources to waste space on it. Right now, space efficiency means survival. Everyone sleeps together for warmth, for safety, for the simple reason that being alone in the Paleolithic is usually how you become something else's breakfast. The smell is what hits you first, assuming you've somehow maintained your modern sense of smell. Unwashed bodies, smoke from the fire that's been burning all, night, animal hides in various stages of processing, the subtle notes of human waste from the designated area that's really not far enough away, and something unidentifiable that you really hope is just rotting plant matter. There's no soap. There won't be soap for thousands of years. You are fundamentally, permanently, magnificently dirty, and so is everyone else. As dawn breaks, you can see your breath in the air. It's late autumn, and the temperature dropped hard overnight. The fire in the center of your shelter has burned down to embers, and someone needs to get it going again before the group freezes. This isn't a job, it's survival. Fire isn't just warmth, it's safety, cooking, tool-making, and the only thing keeping the darkness at bay both literally and psychologically. Chapter 2. The Sacred Flame. Let's talk about fire, because in the Paleolithic world, fire is everything. It's your stove, your heater, your nightlight, your security system, and your social center all, rolled into one absolutely essential element that you cannot let die under any circumstances. Starting a fire in 30,000 BCE is not like flicking a lighter. It's a skill that takes years to master and constant attention to maintain. Your group probably keeps a fire burning continuously day and night, because starting one from scratch is exhausting and not always successful. Someone, usually rotating through the group, is always responsible for keeping it fed, keeping it controlled, and most importantly, keeping it alive. The technique most commonly used is the bow drill method, though hand drills and striking flint against iron pyrite are also options. With a bow drill, you're using a wooden bow to rapidly spin a wooden spindle against a fireboard, creating friction that eventually produces an ember. Sounds simple. It's not. You need the right type of wood, bone dry, not too hard, not too soft. You need the right pressure, the right speed, the right tinder bundle made of the driest grass and bark you can find. On a good day, with perfect conditions and an experienced firemaker, this process takes about 2 minutes of intense physical effort. On a bad day, with damp materials or cold hands or just plain bad luck, you can spend an hour trying to coax a single ember into existence, and if you fail, if the fire goes out completely, your group is in serious trouble. No warmth, no cooked food, no protection from predators who are very much afraid of fire and not afraid of you. This is why fire is treated with something approaching reverence. It's carefully fed with the right materials, dry wood when available, animal fat for extra heat, dried dung when wood is scarce. The fire pit is kept clean of debris that might smother it. Embers are sometimes transported in moss-lined containers when the group moves to a new location, because carrying fire is easier than making it. Around the fire, social hierarchies emerge. Who sits closest to the warmth? Who gets to eat first? Who has the right to speak during group discussions? The fire is the center of everything, the place where decisions are made, stories are told, tools are crafted, and food is shared. It's not just a physical necessity, it's the beating heart of prehistoric social life. And the danger is real. Burns are common, serious, and often fatal. There are no antibiotics, no burn wards, no skin grafts. A bad burn means excruciating pain, probable infection, and possible death. Children are watched carefully near the fire, but accidents happen. Adults bear scars from careless moments, permanent reminders that fire gives life, but demands respect. Chapter 3. The morning routine, such as it is. So you're awake, cold, hungry, and surrounded by people who smell like a history museum's least popular exhibit. Time for your morning routine, except there isn't one, not in the way you'd recognize. There's no bathroom, no toilet, no sink, no shower, no privacy. When nature calls, you walk away, from the shelter to a designated area downwind, squat behind whatever vegetation or rocks are available, and do your business. Toilet paper doesn't exist. You might use leaves, grass, moss, or smooth stones. You might use nothing. Your ancestors were pragmatic about these things in ways that would horrify modern sensibilities. Hand washing also doesn't exist. Not really. You might rinse your hands in a stream if one is nearby, but soap won't be invented for another 27,000 years or so. Everyone has permanent dirt under their fingernails, calloused hands, and a relationship with bacteria that is best described as intimate and unavoidable. Toothbrushing is obviously not happening. Your dental hygiene consists of occasionally chewing on certain fibrous plants or using a twig to pick out food particles. Cavities are less common than you might think, mainly because refined sugars don't exist, but tooth wear is serious. Grinding plant materials, chewing tough meat, and occasional grit from stone-ground food wears down teeth progressively. By your 30s, if you make it that far, your teeth are noticeably worn. By your 40s, you might be struggling to chew. Your hair is matted, tangled, and probably hosting a small ecosystem of lice. Everyone has lice. It's just a fact of life. People pick lice out of each other's hair as a social bonding activity, kind of like grooming in other primates, which makes sense because you are a primate, just one that's gotten weirdly ambitious about tool use. Clothing is minimal and entirely functional. In warm climates, you might wear just a hide wrapped around your waist. In colder regions, you're bundled in whatever animal skins you've managed to acquire, stitched together with sinew thread and bone needles. These clothes are not washed. They're worn until they fall apart, then replaced with new ones from the next kill. The smell is unfathomable. You reek of smoke, sweat, animal fat, and the general odor of someone who has never, not once, taken a proper bath. Your body is lean, muscled, and covered in scars. Every scratch that got infected left a mark. Every fall, every animal encounter, every slip with a sharp tool has written itself onto your skin. You look like someone who lives hard, because you do. There's no soft living in the Paleolithic. Your hands are calloused like leather, your feet are tough enough to walk on rough ground, and your body is a map of survival. Chapter 4. Breakfast, if you're lucky. Modern breakfast is a routine. Toast, eggs, coffee, maybe some fruit. Paleolithic breakfast is whatever didn't get eaten yesterday, if anything. Food security is non-existent. Some days there's plenty, most days there's not. And some days there's nothing at all. If you're lucky, breakfast might be leftover meat from a recent kill, dried and preserved over the fire. It's chewy, smoky, and possibly starting to turn. But calories are calories, and you're not in a position to be choosy. You tear into it with your teeth chewing hard, swallowing chunks that would make a modern person gag. More commonly, breakfast is whatever edible plants the gathering team found yesterday. Nuts, berries, roots, tubers, wild grains. These are eaten raw or lightly roasted in the fire's ashes. Some are delicious, sweet and satisfying. Others are bitter, stringy, or require extensive processing to become even marginally palatable. You eat them anyway because hunger is a constant companion and you've learned to ignore taste in favour of survival. Water comes from whatever source is nearby, a stream, a spring, a pond. You drink it directly, no filtration, no boiling unless it's mixed with food. Waterborne parasites are common. Giardia, dysentery, various worms, these are just part of life. Your immune system is either robust enough to handle it, or you die. Natural selection is happening in real time, every day, with every drink. There's no breakfast table, no family sit-down meal people eat when they're hungry, if food is available. Some share generously, others hoard. Social bonds are constantly tested by resource scarcity. Who deserves food when there isn't enough for everyone? The hunters who brought in the last kill? The elders who hold knowledge? The children who represent the group's future? These aren't academic questions, they're daily negotiations with life or death consequences. And hunger, real hunger, is something you understand intimately. Not the "I skipped lunch" hunger of modern life, but the deep, gnawing, painful hunger that comes from days without adequate food. Your stomach cramps, your energy plummets, your thinking becomes foggy and focused entirely on obtaining calories. Hunger makes you irritable, desperate, and willing to take risks you wouldn't normally consider. This is the background state of existence. You're always 1 or 2 days away from genuine food crisis. There's no grocery store, no delivery, no safety net. If you don't find food today, you don't eat today, and if that happens too many days in a row, you die. It's that simple and that terrifying. Chapter 5. The work begins. All right, you've woken up, dealt with basic needs, and maybe gotten some food into your system. Now comes the actual work of staying alive, and in the Paleolithic, that work is constant, varied, and absolutely exhausting. The group operates on a division of labour that's partly cultural and partly practical. Generally, but not always, men do more of the hunting of large animals, while women do more of the gathering and small game hunting. But this isn't a rigid system. Everyone does what needs doing. Women hunt, men gather, and survival doesn't care about your gender roles. If you're on the hunting team today, congratulations. You're about to experience one of the most dangerous, difficult, and essential tasks in human history. Hunting large animals with Paleolithic technology is not a weekend sport. It's a calculated risk that can feed your group for days, or get you killed. Your weapons are spears, maybe with stone or bone points carefully shaped and attached with sinew and plant resin. You might have an atlatl, a spear thrower that extends your range and power. Bows and arrows won't be widely used for another 20,000 years or so, depending on your location. These weapons are effective, but they require you to get close, dangerously close, to animals that can kill you with ease. Today's target, deer. You've been tracking a small herd for 2 days, reading their droppings, their tracks, their browsing patterns. You know where they drink, where they bed down, where they're likely to be at this time of day. This knowledge isn't written down anywhere. It's stored in your head and passed down through stories and direct teaching. You're a living database of ecological information, and your life depends on its accuracy. The hunt requires patience bordering on superhuman. You and 3 other hunters move slowly, carefully downwind of the deer. Every step is calculated. A snapped twig, a sudden movement, your scent carried on the wrong. Breeze, and the deer bolt. Your effort wasted. Your group goes hungry another day. You get close, about 30 feet. which in modern terms is terrifyingly close to a wild animal. Your heart is pounding so hard you're sure the deer can hear it. Your hand is steady on the spear, muscles coiled, waiting for the perfect moment. The lead hunter signals. You throw. Chapter 6. The kill and its consequences. Your spear flies true, embedding itself in the deer's flank. The animal bolts, but it's injured, bleeding, panicking. This is where the real work begins. Wounded animals are dangerous and can run for miles. Your group pursues, following the blood trail, spears ready in case it turns to fight or another predator shows up to claim your kill. After an hour of tracking, you find the deer collapsed, still alive but dying. The final kill is quick, a spear thrust to vital areas. There's no glory in suffering, just efficiency. The animal is dead, and now you have maybe 200 pounds of meat, hide, bone and sinew to process before scavengers arrive. Field dressing, the deer happens immediately. Stone knives, sharp but not precise like modern blades, slice through hide and flesh. You remove the internal organs, some of which are eaten on the spot: liver, heart, kidneys, rich in nutrients and traditionally reserved for the hunters who made the kill. The stomach contents are examined, not out of curiosity, but to learn what plants the deer was eating, information that might help the gathering teams. The hide is carefully peeled away, a valuable resource for clothing, shelter or storage containers. Every piece of sinew is saved for cord and thread. Bones will become tools, needles, awls, scrapers. Hooves and antlers have uses too. Nothing is wasted because waste means death. Every part of this animal represents hours of potential work saved, calories gained, survival extended. But here's the problem. You're several miles from camp with a heavy carcass and predators, who definitely smelled the blood and heard the deer's death sounds. Wolves, hyenas, even big cats might be moving in. You need to get this meat back to camp. Fast. The carcass is quickly butchered into manageable pieces. The meat is wrapped in the deer's own hide, distributed among the hunters, and the race back to camp begins. You're carrying 60 pounds of meat, moving as quickly as possible over rough terrain, constantly scanning for threats. Your leg muscles burn, your shoulders ache, but stopping means losing the kill to scavengers, which means this entire dangerous enterprise was for nothing. Back at camp, the arrival of fresh meat triggers immediate activity. Everyone has a role. The meat is distributed according to complex social rules. The hunters get first choice of cuts, but they're expected to be generous. Elders receive quality portions out of respect, and because their knowledge keeps the group alive. Children get softer, more digestible pieces. Nursing mothers need extra calories. The distribution is both practical and deeply social, reinforcing bonds and hierarchies. Some meat is eaten immediately, roasted over the fire, the smell driving everyone wild with hunger. It's the first real abundance many have experienced in days. People eat until they're uncomfortably full because who knows when the next successful hunt will be. But most of the meat needs to be preserved. In warm weather, this is a serious challenge. Thin strips are cut and hung over the fire to smoke and dry, a process that takes days and requires constant attention. The smoke keeps flies away and preserves the meat through dehydration. It won't last forever, maybe a week or two, but that's enough to bridge to the next kill. In colder seasons, preservation is easier. Frozen meat lasts months. Some groups even cache meat in frozen streams or bury it in snow, creating natural freezers that extend their food security considerably. Chapter 7. The gathering economy while hunting gets the dramatic spotlight. Gathering is actually the foundation of Paleolithic survival. On any given day, gathered plant foods provide 60 to 80% of the group's calories. Hunting is feast or famine. Gathering is the steady, reliable backbone of nutrition. The gathering team, often primarily women but not exclusively, heads out at first light with woven baskets or hide containers. Their destination? Anywhere edible plants grow, which in the Paleolithic means you need to know your environment with extraordinary detail. Every plant tells a story. This grass has seeds that can be ground into flour. These berries are sweet and safe, but those berries over there that look almost identical will kill you. This root needs to be cooked to destroy toxins, but that root can be eaten raw. These mushrooms are delicious. Those mushrooms cause liver failure. This knowledge is encyclopedic, detailed, and absolutely critical. The gatherers are botanists, ecologists, and chemists, without laboratories. They identify plants by leaf shape, growth pattern, smell, and season. They know which plants appear after rain, which ones thrive in disturbed soil, which ones grow near water. They understand plant succession, predicting where food will be next week based on what's growing now. They're also incredibly efficient. A skilled gatherer can spot edible plants while walking at normal speed, processing visual information faster than conscious thought. They'll casually dig up a root while talking, drop it in their basket, and continue the conversation without breaking stride. Hours of practice have made them preternaturally aware of food sources. Today's haul is good. Several pounds of nuts, rich in fats and proteins, a collection of tubers, starchy and filling, various greens that provide essential vitamins, and a lucky find of wild berries just coming into season. This represents hours of walking, bending, digging, and careful selection, but gathering isn't without dangers. Venomous snakes hide in the grass. Wasps defend berry patches aggressively. Some plants cause severe skin reactions just from touching them, and gathering teams are vulnerable, away from the main group, armed only with digging sticks and stone knives, potential targets for predators or hostile neighbouring groups. Back at camp, the gathered foods are processed. Nuts are cracked with stones, a tedious process that yields small amounts of nut meat and occasional smashed fingers. Tubers are roasted in the fire's ashes or boiled in hide containers using hot stones, a technique called stone boiling, where heated rocks are dropped into water-filled containers to cook food. Some plants require extensive processing to become edible. Acorns, for instance, are incredibly nutritious but contain bitter, toxic tannins. They must be shelled, ground, and then leached in multiple changes of water over several days before they're safe to eat. The labour investment is enormous, but the caloric payoff makes it worthwhile. Seeds are ground on stone grinding surfaces, creating coarse flour that can be mixed with water and cooked into cakes or porridge. This is back-breaking work, kneeling at the grinding stone, pushing smaller stones back and forth for hours, slowly pulverizing seeds into usable flour. Your knees ache, your shoulders burn, and you've only processed enough flour for one meal. Chapter 8: Craft and Technology. With food secured for the moment, attention turns to the constant need for tools, clothing, and maintenance of equipment. Paleolithic technology is sophisticated, clever, and requires remarkable skill to produce. Stone tool making, or knapping, is an art form. It looks simple. You hit one rock with another rock until it's sharp. But creating a truly functional blade requires understanding stone properties, precise control of striking force and angle, and the ability to visualize the final tool within the raw material. The toolmaker selects a piece of flint or obsidian, materials that fracture in predictable ways. Using a hammerstone, they strike the edge, sending a shock wave through the material that detaches a flake. Each strike is calculated. Too hard, and the piece shatters. Too soft, and nothing happens. The angle must be exact, usually about 70 degrees, to produce usable flakes. Over the course of an hour, a skilled knapper transforms a rough stone into a hand axe, scraper, or blade. The waste flakes aren't discarded. They're often sharper than the core tool and become cutting implements themselves. Nothing is wasted. These stone tools are sharp, genuinely sharp, capable of cutting through hide and flesh with ease. But they're also fragile. Drop one on a rock and it might shatter. Use it wrong and the edge chips. Every tool is both essential and temporary, a balance between function and fragility that requires constant replacement and repair. Bone tools are equally important. Needles for sewing, awls for punching holes in hide, spear points, fish hooks and decorative items all come from animal bones. Working bone is different from working stone. Bones must be soaked, scraped, ground, and polished, a time-intensive process that produces incredibly durable tools. A bone needle, for instance, might take an entire day to make. The bone is carefully grooved with stone tools, then snapped to create a splinter. This splinter is ground against rough stone to shape it, tapered at one end with a hole painstakingly drilled at the other using a stone drill bit. The result is a tool that makes sewing possible, which makes fitted clothing possible, which makes survival in cold climates possible. Sewing is itself a complex skill. Sinew from animals is separated into thin strands, strong and flexible. Using the bone needle, hide is stitched together to create clothing, bags, shelter covers. The stitches must be tight enough to hold, but not so tight they tear the hide. It's precision work that requires good light, steady hands, and tremendous patience. Women are often the primary clothing makers, though men participate, especially in creating their own hunting gear. A full outfit, tunic, leg coverings, foot wraps, might take weeks to complete and represent significant investment of time and resources. This is why clothing is worn until it literally falls apart, then repurposed into smaller items until nothing usable remains. Chapter 9. The social web. Humans are social creatures, and Paleolithic life is intensely, unavoidably social. You're never alone, never truly private, always embedded in a network of relationships that define your survival prospects. The band you're part of consists of maybe 25 people, possibly related by blood, definitely bound by mutual dependence. You've known these people your entire life. You know their strengths, their weaknesses, who can be trusted, who can't, who shares generously, who hoards. Relationships are constantly negotiated. Who owes whom favours? Who contributed most to the last successful hunt? Whose knowledge saved someone's life? These debts and credits don't exist in written form. They're mental ledgers everyone maintains, influencing how resources are shared and decisions are made. Gossip is not frivolous. It's critical social information. Who's lazy? Who's skilled? Who's unreliable? Who might be considering leaving the group? This information shapes alliances, warns of potential conflicts, and maintains social cohesion through reputation management. Your reputation is your most valuable asset, more important than any physical possession. Conflicts arise constantly. Personality clashes, resource disputes, romantic competitions, perceived slights. Without formal law enforcement or written rules, these conflicts are resolved through discussion, social pressure, and occasionally violence. Most disputes are settled by the group's elders, respected individuals whose experience and wisdom give them authority to mediate. But serious conflicts, repeated theft, violence against group members, refusing to share resources, can result in expulsion. Being cast out of the group is essentially a death sentence. Humans survived the Paleolithic through cooperation. Alone, you're vulnerable to predators, unable to hunt large game effectively without backup in injury or illness. Expulsion is rare but feared, the ultimate social sanction. Leadership exists, but it's fluid and context-dependent. The best hunter leads hunting expeditions. The most knowledgeable gatherer leads foraging trips. The most experienced elder mediates disputes. There's no formal chief, just individuals with relevant expertise who temporarily guide specific activities. Decision-making is largely consensual. Major choices, when to move camp, whether to attempt a dangerous hunt, how to respond to encounters with other groups, are discussed until rough consensus emerges. This isn't democracy in the modern sense, but it's not autocracy either. It's pragmatic cooperation born from mutual vulnerability. Children are raised communally. Everyone watches out for everyone's children. This isn't just kindness, it's practical. Those children represent the group's future. They're taught by whoever has relevant knowledge, learning to identify plants from experienced gatherers, to track animals from skilled hunters, to make tools from master craftspeople. Teaching is hands-on and immersive. Children learn by watching and imitating. They start with simple tasks, carrying water, gathering firewood, fetching tools. As they grow, they take on more complex responsibilities, always under supervision, always learning through direct experience rather than abstract instruction. Play is how children develop survival skills. They throw sticks at targets, practicing spear work. They track small animals, learning observation skills. They build miniature shelters, understanding construction principles. What looks like play is actually sophisticated skill development, preparing them for adult responsibilities that will arrive shockingly early by modern standards. Chapter 10. Medicine and Injury. In the Paleolithic, there are no doctors, no hospitals, no antibiotics, no surgery. When you get sick or injured, you have three options. Your body heals itself, the group has knowledge of helpful remedies, or you die. Those are the choices. Injuries are constant. Cuts from stone tools, burns from fires, sprains from rough terrain, broken bones from falls or animal encounters. Your body is a catalogue of accumulated damage, each injury a story of survival or a near miss with death. A deep cut is a serious problem. Without antibiotics, infection is a real threat. The wound is cleaned with water, may be treated with certain plants known to have healing properties, though the group doesn't understand why they work, just that they sometimes do. The cut might be closed with plant fibre stitches or held together with strips of hide. If infection sets in, the area becomes red, swollen, painful. Fever follows. At this point, survival is a coin flip. Broken bones are even more serious. If it's a simple fracture of an arm or leg, the bone might be set, aligned as well as possible, and immobilized with sticks and binding. The injured person becomes a burden on the group, unable to contribute for weeks or months. They're fed and cared for, but there's an unspoken calculation happening. Can the group afford to support someone who can't produce? If the break is compound, bone piercing through skin, the prognosis is grim. Infection is almost certain. The person might survive, but they'll likely be permanently disabled, walking with a limp, unable to run or hunt effectively. In a world where mobility means survival, disability is often a slow death sentence. Childbirth is the most dangerous thing a woman faces. With no medical intervention, complications that would be routine in modern hospitals are potentially fatal. Breech births, prolonged labour, hemorrhaging, these kill women and babies regularly. The group might have midwives, experienced women who've attended many births, but their tools are limited to positioning, massage, and hope. Maternal mortality rates are staggering. Perhaps 1 in 10 births results in the mother's death. Infant mortality is even worse. Maybe half of children don't survive to age 5, succumbing to disease, accidents, malnutrition, or any of the countless dangers that modern medicine has rendered rare. Pain management is primitive. Certain plants have analgesic properties. Willow bark contains compounds similar to aspirin. Various herbs produce mild sedative effects. But for serious pain, the best the group can offer is distraction and endurance. You suffer through it, or you don't. Some injuries result in amputation, losing fingers to frostbite, toes to infection, even whole limbs to crushing injuries or gangrene. These amputations are crude, performed with stone tools without anesthesia, a traumatic event that most people don't survive. Those who do are permanently changed, adapting to disability in a world with no accommodations. Disease is poorly understood. The group knows that some illnesses pass from person to person, leading to isolation of the sick when possible, but they don't understand contagion in germ theory terms. Illness is mysterious, possibly spiritual, maybe a punishment or curse. Treatments mix practical remedies with ritual, covering all bases in hope something works. Parasites are universal. Intestinal worms, lice, ticks, fleas. Everyone has multiple parasitic infections simultaneously. They cause discomfort, drain nutrition, sometimes lead to serious complications. The group might know remedies that reduce parasite loads, but complete elimination is impossible. You just live with it. Chapter 11. Encounters and Dangers. The Paleolithic world is not empty. Other human groups exist, some friendly, some hostile, all competing for the same resources in a landscape that barely supports existing populations. Encounters with strangers are tense, dangerous, and potentially violent. Today, your group spots smoke from another camp, maybe 2 miles away. This is concerning. Are they aware of you? Are they friendly? Do they have more people? Better weapons? A discussion follows. Some argue for avoidance, moving to a different area. Others suggest making contact, potentially establishing trade relationships or finding mates. Genetic diversity is essential for small populations. A delegation is chosen, 3 adults, not armed for battle but carrying gifts, surplus tools, some dried meat, a gesture of peaceful intent. They approach the other camp cautiously, making noise so they're not mistaken for predators, showing empty hands, using universal gestures of non-aggression. The other group is similarly cautious. Initial communication is difficult, you don't share a language, but humans are remarkably good at nonverbal communication. Gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice convey basic meanings. Food is shared, a universal peace offering. Both groups relax slightly, though tension remains. Over several hours, basic trade occurs. Your group offers high-quality flint from a quarry you know. They offer shells from the coast, valuable for decoration and trade with inland groups. Information is exchanged. 2. Where game is plentiful, which water sources are reliable, warnings about dangerous areas or aggressive groups. But not all encounters are peaceful. Sometimes groups compete for the same hunting grounds or gathering areas. Conflicts can turn violent quickly. Raids happen, small groups attacking others to steal resources, capture women for genetic diversity, which sounds clinical but was brutal in practice, or eliminate competition. Violence in the Paleolithic is personal and horrifying. No guns, no distance, just close-quarters brutality with spears, clubs, and stone weapons. Death is slow and agonizing. Survivors bear terrible wounds, broken bones, deep cuts, traumatic injuries that often lead to infection and delayed death. Your group has defensive strategies. Camp locations are chosen for defensibility, near water but with clear sight lines, difficult to approach unseen. Sentries keep watch at night. Weapons are always within reach. Everyone, including women and older, children, knows how to fight if necessary. Survival sometimes depends on collective violence, a grim reality that shapes social psychology. Predators are another constant danger. Cave bears, saber-toothed cats, wolves, hyenas. These animals are competitors and threats. Some see humans as prey, especially children or injured individuals separated from the group. A cave bear encounter is terrifying. These animals are massive, easily over 1,000 pounds, with claws and teeth that can kill with single strikes. Your spears are effective but require multiple hunters working together. One person alone against a cave bear dies quickly and messily. Wolves hunt in packs, intelligent and strategic. They probe defenses, looking for weakness, targeting the young or weak. Fire keeps them at bay usually, but desperate or particularly bold packs sometimes attack anyway. Nighttime is when fear is strongest. Every sound in the darkness potentially a threat. Even smaller predators are dangerous. Leopard can drag away a child. A pack of wild dogs can kill an isolated adult. Constant vigilance is required, another layer of stress in an already stressful existence. Chapter 12. Art, Ritual, and the Invisible World. Despite the harshness, or perhaps because of it, Paleolithic humans created art. Cave paintings, carved figurines, decorated tools, these aren't survival necessities, but they appear consistently across cultures and time periods. Art, it seems, is fundamentally human. The cave paintings are extraordinary. Deep in dark caves, sometimes miles from the entrance, prehistoric artists created vivid depictions of animals, hunting scenes, geometric patterns, and mysterious symbols. They used natural pigments, ochre for reds and yellows, charcoal for blacks, mixed with animal fat to create paint. The application was done by hand, with brushes made from animal hair, or by blowing pigment through hollow bones to create stencils and patterns. Creating these paintings required planning and resources. Torches or fat lamps provided light in the deep darkness. Scaffolding was sometimes built to reach high cave walls. The work was deliberate, detailed, demonstrating skill and artistic vision. Why did they do it? We can only speculate, but the effort suggests these images were important, possibly spiritual or ritual in nature. Maybe they were sympathetic magic, painting the hunt to ensure its success. Maybe they were teaching tools, showing children what animals looked like and how to hunt them. Maybe they were stories, recording events or myths. Figurines, especially female figures with exaggerated sexual features, called Venus figurines, appear across Paleolithic Europe. Carved from stone, bone, or ivory, these objects required hours of detailed work. Their purpose is debated: fertility symbols, goddess representations, teaching models for childbirth, self-portraits. We simply don't know. But their widespread presence suggests shared cultural meanings. Burial practices indicate belief in an afterlife or spiritual realm. The dead are sometimes buried with grave goods, tools, ornaments, food, suggesting belief that these items would be needed in whatever came next. Bodies are positioned deliberately, sometimes covered with ochre, sometimes arranged with shells or beads. These burials represent significant investment. Digging a grave is hard work. Giving up valuable tools and food to bury with the dead means believing something continues beyond physical death. This is sophisticated, abstract thinking, contemplating existence, meaning, and mortality. Shamans or spiritual leaders likely existed, individuals who mediated between the physical and spiritual worlds. They might enter trance states using rhythmic drumming, dancing, or psychoactive plants to communicate with spirits or ancestors. These individuals held specialized knowledge, able to cure illnesses, predict animal movements, interpret dreams. Ritual almost certainly played a role in major events. Before a hunt, rituals might be performed to ensure success. After a death, mourning rituals helped the group process grief. Seasonal changes might be marked with ceremonies, acknowledging the passage of time and the cycles that govern survival. Music existed too. Bone flutes have been found, their holes precisely placed to produce musical scales. Drums made from hide stretched over hollow logs or frames provided rhythm. Singing, clapping, and stamping created communal soundscapes, bonding the group through shared experience. These artistic and spiritual practices reveal that Paleolithic humans were not simply survival machines. They thought abstractly, created beauty, contemplated existence, and found meaning in a world that was often brutally indifferent to their suffering. Chapter 13. The Long Twilight. As the sun sets, the temperature drops rapidly. Without modern insulation, heat dissipates quickly once the sun goes down. The fire becomes even more critical, the only source of warmth and light in the gathering darkness. Evening is social time. With daylight work ended, the group gathers around the fire. Stories are told, usually by elders, passing down knowledge disguised as entertainment. These stories teach lessons. This is what happens if you ignore warnings about dangerous plants. This is how our ancestors survived a terrible winter. This is why we don't go to that valley where the spirits are angry. Storytelling is memory storage for a non-literate culture. Everything the group knows, ecological information, historical events, moral lessons, technical knowledge, is encoded in stories and passed down orally. A good storyteller is valuable, preserving knowledge that might save lives. Tool maintenance happens in the firelight. Spear points are checked for cracks. Clothing is mended. Baskets are repaired. These tasks require attention but not intense concentration, allowing conversation while working. Children play near the fire, their games observed by adults who occasionally intervene with instruction or correction. Even play has purpose, teaching cooperation, practicing skills, building social bonds that will support them throughout life. Relationships deepen in the firelight. Couples sit close, young people flirt under the watchful eyes of elders. Friendships are strengthened through shared conversation. Romance exists, complicated by small group dynamics where everyone knows everyone's business, but humans find ways to connect. As full darkness descends, activity slows. There's nothing to do in the dark without adequate light. People prepare for sleep, banking the fire to last through the night, arranging sleeping areas, settling in for another night of communal rest. But sleep is not easy. The darkness beyond the firelight is complete, absolute, filled with sounds that could be wind or predators. Every snap of a twig, every animal call triggers alertness. The appointed sentry keeps watch, feeding the fire, listening for danger, occasionally waking others if something seems wrong. Sleep is fragmented, light, ready to wake at any sign of threat. Deep, restful sleep is a luxury for nights when safety seems assured, which is rare. The body learns to rest while remaining alert, an exhausting balance that takes its toll over time. Chapter 14. Why You Wouldn't Survive. After living a day in Paleolithic times, it's clear you would not survive. None of us would, not without extensive training and acclimatization, and probably not even then. Your body is wrong for this world. You're not lean enough, Not tough enough, not adapted to constant physical stress. Your soft modern hands would blister and bleed within hours of Paleolithic work. Your feet, accustomed to supportive shoes, would be shredded by rough terrain. Your back, used to chairs and beds, would rebel against sleeping on the ground. Your immune system is wrong too. Modern hygiene and medicine have left you vulnerable to pathogens that Paleolithic humans handled routinely. The first parasitic infection would devastate you. Drinking untreated water would likely give you serious illness. Your gut bacteria, shaped by processed foods, couldn't handle the Paleolithic diet. Your skills are wrong. You don't know how to make fire from scratch, how to track animals, which plants are edible, how to knap stone tools, how to sew with sinew. You don't have the physical conditioning for hours of walking, carrying heavy loads, or the endurance for long hunts. You'd be useless to the group, a burden, consuming resources without contributing. Your psychology is wrong. You're used to privacy, personal space, individual choice. The constant social pressure, lack of privacy, and subordination of individual desires to group needs would be psychologically crushing. You'd struggle with the violence, the death, the suffering, the absence of comfort or security. You're used to safety, to knowing food will be available, to believing tomorrow will come. Paleolithic life offers no such certainties. Every day is a gamble against hunger, predators, disease, injury, violence. The constant stress would break you mentally long before your body gave out. But the Paleolithic humans, your ancestors, they survived this. Not just survived, thrived enough to spread across the entire planet, adapting to every climate from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests. They were tougher, smarter in practical ways, and more resilient than we can imagine. They didn't have the luxury of giving up. There was no safety net, no rescue coming, no alternative but to keep going. They endured hunger, pain, loss, and fear, day after day, generation after generation, long enough to eventually develop agriculture, cities, writing, and all the comforts of civilization that would make their harsh lives obsolete. We are their descendants, carrying their genes, built from their survival. Every adaptation that helped them endure, stronger bones, efficient metabolism, complex social intelligence, is still present in us, mostly dormant in our comfortable modern lives, but activated when necessary. The Paleolithic was not romantic. It was brutal, short, and unforgiving. But it was also the crucible that forged humanity, teaching us cooperation, innovation, and endurance. Understanding what daily life was actually like, the grinding struggle, the constant danger, the tiny moments of beauty and connection, helps us appreciate both how far we've come and what we're capable of when pushed to our limits. So, the next time you're frustrated by modern inconveniences, traffic, slow Wi-Fi, a delayed package, take a moment to remember your ancestors who woke up cold, hungry, and surrounded by things that could kill them, and still found ways to laugh, love, create art, and build the foundations of everything that came after. Chapter 15. The Seasons of Survival. Living in the Paleolithic means your entire existence is governed by seasonal cycles in ways modern humans can barely comprehend. Central heating and refrigeration have insulated us from the reality that for most of human history, the changing seasons were literally life or death. Let's start with winter, because winter is when the Paleolithic shows its teeth. In regions with real winters, Europe, Northern Asia, parts of North America, the temperature plunge is not just uncomfortable, it's existential. You're facing months of sub-freezing temperatures with technology that would make a modern survivalist weep. Your shelter becomes your world. Venturing outside for extended periods risks hypothermia and frostbite. The group huddles together in whatever structure they've built, bodies pressed close for warmth, fire burning constantly, consuming wood at an alarming rate. Someone has to gather that wood, which means going outside into the brutal cold, often in inadequate clothing, to find dead branches that aren't frozen solid or buried under snow. Food scarcity hits hard. Most plants are dormant or dead. Gathering becomes nearly impossible. The group survives on stored foods, dried meat from autumn hunts, nuts carefully hoarded, roots buried in the ground for preservation. But these stores are finite, calculated to last a certain number of months. If winter runs long, if the stores were insufficient, if anything goes wrong, starvation becomes real. Hunting in winter is its own nightmare. Animals are scarce, many having migrated or gone into hibernation. Those that remain are lean, their own fat reserves depleted by the season. Tracking is harder through snow, though it does show prints clearly. But the cold makes you clumsy, slows your reflexes, saps your strength. A hunt that might take 4 hours in summer can take 2 days in winter, and failure means returning empty-handed to a group counting on you. The psychological toll of winter is crushing. Endless dark days, confined spaces, dwindling food, constant cold that seeps into your bones no matter how close you sit to the fire. Cabin fever is real, tensions rise, conflicts that might be minor in summer become explosive when everyone's trapped together for months. Some people simply give up, a depression setting in that leads them to stop fighting for survival. Spring brings relief but also challenges. As temperatures rise, the snow melt creates flooding. Rivers swell, low-lying areas become impassable marshes. But it also brings renewal. Plants burst into growth, animals emerge from hibernation or return from migration. Suddenly, food is everywhere, and the group can rebuild after winter's deprivations. Spring is birthing season for many animals, which means vulnerable young prey but also fiercely protective mothers. A deer with a fawn will attack if threatened. A bear emerging from hibernation with cubs is extraordinarily dangerous. The abundance comes with risks that require navigation. Plants in spring include many that are only edible for a brief window. Young shoots and leaves are tender and nutritious, but within weeks they become tough and bitter. The gathering teams have to time their harvest perfectly, taking advantage of brief windows of optimal nutrition. Summer is the season of plenty, relatively speaking. Long days mean more time for gathering and hunting. Plants are at peak production, fruits ripen, nuts develop, roots grow fat. Animals are healthy, well-fed, easier to hunt. This is when the group works hardest, not resting in the abundance but frantically preparing for the next winter. Preservation becomes the focus. Every successful hunt means processing meat for storage. Every gathering expedition includes thought about what can be dried, what can be stored, what needs to be eaten immediately. There's no relaxation, just different urgency, the urgency of preparation rather than immediate survival. But summer has dangers too. Heat can be deadly, especially during exertion. Dehydration is a constant risk. Insects swarm, mosquitoes, flies, ticks, making outdoor work miserable and spreading diseases. Food spoils quickly in the heat, requiring careful attention to preservation techniques. Water sources can dry up, forcing the group to relocate or dig for underground water. Autumn is harvest season, the final push before winter. This is when the group's survival hangs in the balance. Have they gathered enough, preserved enough, prepared enough? The calculations are desperate, trying to estimate how much food will sustain how many people for how many months. Knowing that error means death, autumn hunting intensifies. Animals are fattening up for winter, making them ideal targets. But they're also more alert, more cautious, harder to approach. The group might attempt risky hunts they'd avoid at other times, driven by the knowledge that winter is coming and the stores must be filled. The psychological pressure is intense. Every failed hunt, every spoiled batch of preserved meat, every accident that wastes resources. These aren't just setbacks, they're potential death sentences deferred to winter. The group works with grim determination, exhausting themselves in the race against the calendar. Chapter 16. Water, the forgotten essential. We talk about food and shelter, but water is the most critical resource, and in the Paleolithic, it's far from guaranteed. You can survive weeks without food, you'll die in days without water, and finding, accessing and storing water safely is a constant challenge. Your group camps near water sources because they have to. A stream, spring or pond is non-negotiable. The location might be less defensible, the shelter options worse, the hunting poorer, but without water, none of that matters because you'll be dead in 72 hours, but proximity to water brings problems. These are also the places predators visit to drink. Watering holes are hunting grounds for big cats, bears, crocodiles, depending on location. Approaching water requires caution. Scanning for threats. ready to flee or fight. The water itself is questionable. That clear, beautiful stream might look pristine, but upstream there could be a dead animal decomposing, animal droppings contaminating the flow, or parasites waiting for a host. You drink anyway, because the alternative is death by dehydration, and you just hope your immune system can handle whatever microscopic horrors you're consuming. Some groups learn to recognize safer water sources. Fast-moving streams are generally better than stagnant ponds. Water emerging from underground springs tends to be cleaner, but this knowledge is hard-won, learned through people getting sick and the group noting patterns. Every rule is written in suffering. Boiling water would make it safer, but that requires containers that can withstand heat. Animal hide containers can be used for stone boiling, dropping hot rocks into water-filled hide bags, but this is labour-intensive and not always practical for drinking water. Ceramic containers would solve this, but pottery won't be widely used for thousands of years in most regions. Water storage is another challenge. You can't carry much water, limiting how far from a water source the group can safely travel. Hide bags hold some, but they're heavy and prone to leaking. This ties the group to water sources, restricting movement and making them predictable to both prey and predators. In dry seasons or arid regions, finding water becomes the primary focus of existence. The group might dig in dry riverbeds, excavating down to the water table. They might follow animal tracks, knowing animals can sense water from great distances. They might suck moisture from certain plants or collect dew from leaves in the early morning. Dehydration is a serious risk, especially during exertion in hot weather. The symptoms are familiar to Paleolithic humans: dizziness, weakness, dark urine, confusion. Push too far without water and you collapse, potentially never to rise. Hunting or gathering teams have to carefully calculate their range based on water availability. In winter, water presents different problems. Streams freeze, making access difficult. You can eat snow, but that lowers your body temperature and requires precious calories to warm it internally. Ice can be melted near the fire, but that's time-consuming and fuel-intensive. Winter water access is another layer of difficulty in an already impossible season. The group's relationship with water is intimate and constant. You know every water source in your territory. Which ones run year-round, which ones dry up in summer, which ones attract dangerous animals, which ones make people sick. This knowledge is survival, and losing access to water sources through drought, competition with other groups or environmental changes can force migration or conflict. Chapter 17. The Reality of Violence. Let's talk about something uncomfortable but essential to understanding Paleolithic life. Violence. Not the sanitized Hollywood version, but the brutal, personal, consequence-heavy violence that was part of daily reality. Interpersonal violence within the group happens. People fight over resources, romantic partners, perceived slights, or just because stress and hunger make everyone irritable. Most conflicts are resolved non-violently through social pressure, mediation by elders, or the understanding that the group's survival depends on cooperation. But sometimes violence erupts. A fistfight over food distribution, a brawl over a romantic partner, a rage-fueled attack from someone who's mentally snapped under the constant pressure. Without police or legal systems, these conflicts are handled by the group collectively. The aggressor might be beaten, exiled, or in extreme cases, killed. Yes, execution happens. Someone who repeatedly endangers the group through violence, theft, or refusing to cooperate might be collectively decided to be expendable. The execution is brutal, personal, often done with stones or clubs. There's no sanitized lethal injection, just the ugly reality of ending a human life with crude tools and strong arms. The psychological impact of this violence is profound. You might be asked to participate in executing someone you've known your entire life, or you witness it, including children, who learn early that life is cheap and society's rules are enforced through collective brutality. Violence between groups is even more common and destructive. When two bands encounter each other, the outcome depends on numerous factors: relative sizes, whether they're related groups, resource availability, previous history. Some encounters are peaceful, others friendly, but some turn violent immediately. Raids are a fact of life. A larger group might attack a smaller one to steal resources, capture women, increasing genetic diversity while eliminating competition, or simply eliminate rivals for hunting grounds. These raids are savage, no quarter given, no mercy for the defeated. Men are killed, often tortured first. Women are abducted. Children might be killed or integrated into the victorious group. Defending against raids requires constant vigilance. Camps are positioned defensively, weapons are always ready, and everyone understands basic combat tactics. Even children know what to do if the alarm is raised: grab weapons, protect the vulnerable, fight or flee as directed. The weapons of Paleolithic warfare are crude but effective. Spears with stone points can punch through flesh and bone. Wooden clubs can shatter skulls. Rocks can break limbs and cave in chests. Death is slow, painful, and terrifying. There are no clean headshots, just agonizing wounds that lead to death through blood loss, infection, or organ failure. Survivors of violence bear the marks: missing eyes, broken, noses that healed crooked, fingers or hands lost to defensive wounds, scars across faces and bodies. These marks tell stories, warnings to others about the consequences of conflict, evidence of survival against odds. Post-traumatic stress is surely present, though not named or understood as such. People who've experienced or committed extreme violence show the signs: hypervigilance, emotional numbness, violent outbursts, withdrawal from social interaction. The group might recognize these patterns and try to help, or they might simply accept it as the price of survival. Women and children are not exempt from violence. Women defend themselves and their children fiercely and are expected to fight when the group is threatened. Children witness violence regularly, becoming desensitized early, which is perhaps protective given the world they're growing up in. But here's the paradox. Alongside this violence exists deep cooperation, altruism, and care. The same person who participates in a brutal raid might tenderly care for an injured group member, share food with someone hungry, or comfort a grieving child. Humans are capable of extraordinary violence and extraordinary compassion, often within the same individual, sometimes on the same day. The violence of the Paleolithic isn't senseless or sadistic, though it can be brutal. It's pragmatic, serving purposes like resource acquisition, group defense, or social control. Understanding this doesn't make it less horrifying, but it contextualizes why peaceful modern life, protected by laws and institutions, is such a radical departure from most of human history. Chapter 18: Language and Communication. Imagine trying to survive in the Paleolithic without language. Impossible, right? Language is perhaps the most crucial technology humans possess, more important than fire or tools, because language enables the transmission of complex information, cooperation, and culture. Your language is not like modern languages. It's probably smaller in vocabulary, more concrete, focused on things directly relevant to survival. Abstract concepts exist but might be expressed differently. Numbers might only go to many beyond a certain point. Time references are seasonal or event-based, rather than measured in hours and minutes. But don't mistake smaller for simpler. Your language is perfectly adequate for your needs. You have dozens of words for different types of snow, rock, or animal behavior, because those distinctions matter for survival. You can describe complex tracking scenarios, explain tool-making techniques, recount detailed stories, all with precision and nuance. Communication goes beyond words. Gesture language is crucial, especially when hunting where silence is required. A series of hand signals can communicate 3 deer, over the ridge, moving toward the river, approach from downwind. Every hunter knows these signals instinctively, can read them from hundreds of feet away. Facial expressions and body language convey emotional states and intentions. You can read people's moods from across the camp, knowing who's angry, who's frightened, who's in pain. This non-verbal communication is essential in a group where everyone's emotional state affects group function. Storytelling is the primary form of entertainment and education. Elders tell stories around the evening fire, recounting hunts, teaching lessons, preserving history. These stories aren't just entertainment, they're databases of survival information. The story about the man who ate the wrong berries and died teaches plant identification. The tale of the great hunt that fed the group through winter teaches cooperation and strategy. Stories also encode moral lessons and social rules, the punishment for theft, the importance of sharing, the consequences of cowardice, all reinforced through narrative. In a pre-literate society, stories are law, textbook, and entertainment combined. Songs serve similar purposes, rhythmic. Chants might help coordinate group tasks, everyone pulling a heavy log to the beat of a work song. Lullabies calm children. Hunting songs might be sung before expeditions, building morale and focus. Music is functional, social, and deeply human. Names are important, marking individual identity in a world where identity is often subsumed in group function. Your name might reference a characteristic, running deer, stone shaper, or an event surrounding your birth, born in snow, first son. Names create identity, but also embed you in the group's story. Gossip is crucial social communication. Who's reliable, who's lazy, who's generous, who's dangerous. This information spreads through networks of conversation, shaping reputations and social standing. Your reputation, maintained through gossip networks, might be your most valuable asset. Teaching language to children is constant and immersive. Babies hear language continuously, are spoken to directly, included in conversations even before. They can respond. Toddlers learn through imitation and correction. By age 5, a child is functionally fluent, able to participate in adult conversations and contribute to group knowledge. But language barriers create serious problems when encountering other groups. Without shared language, communication is difficult, increasing the chance of misunderstanding and conflict. Groups that interact regularly might develop pidgin languages, simplified communication systems that allow basic interaction. Over time, these might become more sophisticated, facilitating trade and peaceful coexistence. Chapter 19. The Children's Education. Childhood in the Paleolithic is short but intensive. By age 7 or 8, you're expected to contribute meaningfully to group survival. By 12, you're basically an adult, capable of all the tasks required to keep yourself and others alive. This isn't child labour exploitation, it's survival necessity. Everyone contributes or everyone suffers. The education starts early, almost from birth. Babies are carried everywhere, strapped to mothers' backs or fronts, experiencing the full range of adult activities. They hear conversations, see tool-making, experience hunting and gathering trips. This passive exposure builds familiarity with the environment and tasks. Toddlers begin active learning through play that mimics adult work. Children throw sticks at targets, developing the muscle memory and hand-eye coordination needed for spear hunting. They dig in the dirt with sticks, practicing the motions used in gathering roots. They build tiny shelters from sticks and leaves, learning construction principles. Adults encourage this play learning, offering gentle corrections and praise. A child who throws a stick well is praised, building confidence and motivation. One who identifies an edible plant correctly gets acknowledgement, reinforcing the learning. Education is positive, engaging, and directly connected to real-world application. Around age 5 or 6, children begin accompanying adults on tasks, first as observers, then as helpers. A child might join a gathering expedition, watching at first, then helping collect obvious foods under supervision, gradually taking on more responsibility as skill develops. Mistakes are expected and used as teaching opportunities. A child who picks a poisonous berry instead of an edible one isn't punished harshly, but shown the difference, the subtle variation in leaf shape or stem color that distinguishes safe from deadly. The lesson is practical, immediate, and memorable. Different children show aptitude for different skills, and this is recognized and cultivated. One child might have exceptional hand-eye coordination and become a skilled spear thrower. Another might have keen observational skills and excel at tracking. A third might have steady hands and patience, perfect for detailed tool-making. Adults notice these aptitudes and provide specialized instruction. Boys and girls often learn gender-typical tasks, hunting for boys, gathering for girls, but this isn't rigidly enforced. A girl who shows hunting aptitude might be trained in it. A boy interested in plant knowledge is taught gathering skills. Survival requires flexibility, and talent is too valuable to waste on rigid social rules. Storytelling is a crucial educational tool. Children hear stories repeatedly, absorbing information about animal behavior, plant properties, weather patterns, group history, all encoded in engaging narratives. A story about the grandmother who survived by finding water in a dry riverbed teaches both technique and perseverance. Apprenticeship is informal but real. A child interested in toolmaking spends time with skilled knappers, watching, asking questions, trying under supervision. The master craftsperson patiently corrects errors, demonstrates techniques, shares the subtle knowledge that can't be easily verbalized. Physical toughening is part of education. Children are expected to endure discomfort, cold, hunger, minor injuries, without excessive complaint. This isn't cruelty, it's preparation for a life where comfort is rare and resilience is essential. A child who cries over every scraped knee won't survive the genuine hardships coming. By age 10 or 12, children are largely self-sufficient. They can find and prepare food, make and maintain their own tools and clothing, defend themselves, and contribute meaningfully to group survival. In modern terms, they're ready for adulthood at an age when our children are still in middle school. The transition to full adulthood might be marked by rituals or tests. A boy's first major kill, providing substantial meat to the group, might be celebrated with ceremony. A girl's first menstruation marks her as capable of bearing children, possibly accompanied by rituals acknowledging this change. These young adults take on full responsibilities, but also gain full standing in group decisions. Their voices are heard in discussions, their expertise in specific skills acknowledged, their opinions valued. Age matters less than competence in a world where yesterday's child might be today's most skilled hunter or gatherer. Chapter 20. The Twilight Years. Growing old in the Paleolithic is an achievement few reach. Most people die young, from violence, disease, accidents, or the accumulated toll of harsh living. But those who survive to old age, say 45 or 50, occupy a special place in the group's social structure. Elders hold knowledge, decades of accumulated experience, observations, successful techniques, and remembered failures. They're living libraries in a society without writing, repositories of information that can mean the difference between survival and death. Which plants are edible, they know from direct experience, perhaps having seen someone die from eating the wrong one 30 years ago. Where game is likely to be in different seasons, they've observed these patterns for decades. How to handle specific situations, they've lived through them before. This knowledge makes elders valuable despite their reduced physical capabilities. A 45-year-old can't hunt as effectively as a 20-year-old. Their joints ache, their eyesight dims, their stamina is reduced. But their expertise guides hunters to success, improving everyone's chances. Their plant knowledge helps gatherers avoid poisonous species or find food sources others might miss. Elders serve as mediators in conflicts, using their experience and respected status to settle disputes before they escalate to violence. Their judgment, refined through decades of observing human behavior and group dynamics, helps maintain social cohesion when tensions rise. They're also the primary teachers, passing knowledge to children and young adults through instruction, stories, and patient demonstration. An elder teaching a child to knap stone tools is transferring skills developed over a lifetime, explaining subtleties that only experience reveals. But aging is brutal without modern medicine. Arthritis is common, joints worn down by decades of hard use, making every movement painful. Teeth wear down or fall out, limiting diet to soft foods and creating nutritional deficiencies. Eyesight and hearing deteriorate, making some tasks impossible and increasing vulnerability to danger. Injuries that healed in youth become chronic problems. That broken leg from 20 years ago now aches constantly, limiting mobility. Old burns create scarred, inflexible tissue that restricts movement. The body accumulates damage without the ability to fully repair, each wound leaving permanent deficits. Despite these limitations, elders contribute in ways that don't require physical prowess. They work on detailed crafts, making stone tools, sewing clothing, weaving baskets, tasks that demand patience and skill rather than strength or speed. They mind children, freeing younger adults for more physically demanding work. They maintain the fire, crucial but not strenuous. The group's treatment of elderly members reveals their values and resources. In times of plenty, elders are well cared for, fed generously, housed. Near the fire, their comfort prioritized in recognition of their contributions. In times of scarcity, the calculation becomes grimmer. Every mouth to feed strains limited resources. An elder who can no longer contribute might be viewed as a burden. Some cultures develop abandonment practices in desperate times, leaving elderly or infirm members behind when the group must move quickly or when resources are critically low. This is presented as the elder's choice, a voluntary sacrifice for the group's survival. But the social pressure is immense. These abandonments are tragedies, recognized as such even as they're deemed necessary. Other groups maintain care for elders regardless of resources, viewing their accumulated knowledge as too valuable to lose and their care as a moral obligation. These different approaches reflect different cultural values and resource availabilities, but both emerge from the same harsh calculus of Paleolithic survival. Death, when it comes for an elder, is often from accumulated minor problems rather than a single catastrophic event: infection from a small wound that won't heal, pneumonia during a cold snap, starvation during a hard winter. The body simply gives out, weakened beyond its ability to recover. Elders often see it coming, the gradual decline signaling the approach of death. Some accept it with equanimity, having lived full lives and ready to rest. Others rage against it, fighting for every additional day. The group honors their passing with burial rituals, mourning practices, and stories that keep their memory and knowledge alive in the survivors. Chapter 21: Migration and the Changing World. The Paleolithic world is not static. Climate changes, sometimes gradually over centuries, sometimes shockingly fast over decades. Ice ages advance and retreat. Sea levels rise and fall. Entire ecosystems transform. Your group must adapt or die, and often adaptation means migration. Imagine the decision to migrate. Your group has lived in this territory for generations, maybe centuries. Every water source, every good hunting ground, every useful plant stand is intimately known. This is home in the deepest sense, the landscape of your ancestors, embedded in stories and memory. But something has changed. Maybe the climate has shifted, becoming colder or drier. The plants your group depends on are failing, animals migrating elsewhere, water sources drying up. Maybe competition with other groups has intensified, making your traditional hunting grounds dangerous. Maybe a disaster, a wildfire, flood, or volcanic eruption has made the area uninhabitable. The elders debate. Some argue for staying, relying on accumulated knowledge of this territory, hoping conditions will improve. Others advocate for migration, seeking new lands with better resources. The arguments are intense because the stakes are ultimate: stay and risk slow death from starvation, leave and risk immediate death in unknown territories. Eventually, the decision is made. The group will migrate. Preparations begin immediately. Food is preserved for the journey, as much as can be carried. Tools are checked and repaired. No time for breakage during travel. The sick and injured face grim calculations. Can they survive the journey? If not, what happens to them? The migration begins at dawn. The group moves in a loose column, strongest hunters in front and rear providing security, children and elderly in the middle, everyone carrying what they can. A few belongings, tools, weapons, food, and little else. Most possessions are too heavy or bulky to transport, left behind in the abandoned camp. Progress is slow. The group can only move as fast as its slowest members, perhaps 10 or 15 miles per day over good terrain, less over rough ground. Children need frequent breaks. Elderly struggle with the pace. Pregnant women face special difficulties, their changed bodies making long-distance travel exhausting and dangerous. The route is uncertain. Maybe stories from other groups mention good lands in a certain direction. Maybe hunters have ranged far enough to have some knowledge of what lies ahead. But mostly it's educated guessing, following rivers, moving toward promising landscapes, hoping for the best. Dangers multiply during migration. The group is vulnerable, away from familiar shelters, without established defenses, easily spotted in open movement. Predators notice, and sometimes follow, waiting for stragglers. Other human groups view the migrants as threats or opportunities, potential allies or competitors to be driven off. Finding food becomes desperate. The group doesn't know the new territory's food sources, doesn't recognize local plant species, doesn't know animal behaviors. Gathering is less efficient, hunting more difficult. Hunger becomes constant, energy levels dropping, making the journey harder, even as it becomes more urgent to complete. Water is a critical concern. The group must route through areas with reliable water sources, which isn't always the most direct path. Sometimes they travel extra miles to reach a river or spring, adding days to the journey. Going without water isn't an option. People will die in 3 days, so water sources dictate the route. Illness strikes during migrations. The stress, inadequate nutrition, exhaustion, and exposure weaken immune systems. People fall sick, usually forcing the group to stop and wait, losing precious time, or in desperate circumstances, leaving the sick behind to catch up if they recover or die if they don't. Deaths during migration are common. The elderly who couldn't sustain the pace, the child who wandered off and was taken by predators, the woman who died in childbirth with no time for proper care, the hunter who fell breaking a leg and succumbed to infection. Each loss diminishes the group's strength and morale, making the journey harder psychologically and practically. But eventually, if the group survives, they reach new territory. Maybe it's better than what they left: abundant game, plentiful plants, good water. Maybe it's marginal, requiring adaptation and learning. Or maybe it's already occupied, leading to conflict with groups who view the newcomers as invaders threatening their resources. Establishing in new territory requires immense effort. Everything must be learned from scratch. Which plants are edible here? Where do the animals congregate? What materials are available for tools and shelter? Where are the safe camping locations? Knowledge that took generations to accumulate in the old territory must be built again through experimentation, observation, and inevitable mistakes. Some migrations succeed, the group adapting to new lands, thriving, passing down the story of the great journey to future generations. Other migrations end in disaster, the group perishing in unknown lands, their journey ending in unmarked graves or worse, becoming another group's victims, their knowledge dying with them. Over millennia, these migrations spread humans across the entire planet, from Africa to Europe, Asia, Australia, eventually the Americas. Every habitable environment, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests, from coastal areas to high mountains, received human populations through these desperate, courageous journeys. The adaptations required were extraordinary. Groups moving to Arctic regions had to develop entirely new survival strategies, specialized cold weather clothing, snow shelters, different hunting techniques for Arctic animals. Groups settling islands had to master seafaring, building boats capable of ocean crossings, navigating by stars and currents. Each environment shaped its inhabitants. Arctic peoples developed physical adaptations to cold, stockier builds, higher metabolisms, dietary changes favoring fat consumption. Tropical populations developed resistance to diseases prevalent in hot, wet climates. High-altitude groups adapted to reduced oxygen. Natural selection worked in real time. Those who couldn't adapt died. Those who could survived and reproduced. Cultural evolution accelerated too. Groups developed specialized tools for specific environments, fishing technologies for coastal peoples, sophisticated hide clothing for cold climates, techniques for finding water in deserts. Each innovation increased survival chances and spread through teaching and observation. Chapter 22: The Final Reckoning. So here we are, at the end of a day in the Paleolithic, and really at the end of an era in human history. The Paleolithic eventually gave way to the Neolithic Revolution, when humans began farming and domesticating animals, fundamentally changing the relationship between people and the environment. But that transition took thousands of years, and happened at different times in different places. For the vast majority of human existence, the Paleolithic was simply life. Your ancestors lived this way for tens of thousands of years, roughly 200,000 years of anatomically modern humans living as hunter-gatherers. In comparison, agriculture has existed for only about 12,000 years, and industrial civilization for only about 200. The Paleolithic is not some brief primitive phase. It's the normal human condition, the baseline against which everything else is measured. Understanding this helps explain so much about modern human behavior. Why do we crave sugar and fat? Because in the Paleolithic, those were rare, valuable nutrients that meant survival. Our bodies evolved to store them efficiently because the next meal was never guaranteed. Why do we form tight social bonds? Because isolation meant death. Our ancestors who couldn't cooperate didn't survive to pass on their genes. Why do we fear the dark, snakes, spiders, heights? Because those were genuine threats that killed people regularly. Our modern fears are Paleolithic dangers encoded in our psychology, still triggering anxiety even though most of us will never face a predator or fall from a cliff. Why do we tell stories, create art, seek meaning? Because these aren't modern luxuries. They're fundamental human needs that emerged during the Paleolithic, helping groups maintain cohesion, pass down knowledge, and make sense of a world that was often brutal and incomprehensible. Your body is a Paleolithic body designed for that world, not this one. Your sleep patterns, designed for segmented sleep and natural light cycles, disrupted by artificial lighting and modern schedules. Your dietary needs, evolved for varied unprocessed foods and frequent fasting, overwhelmed by constant availability of refined sugars and processed foods. Your stress response, designed for brief, intense threats like predator encounters, activated constantly by modern chronic stressors like work deadlines and social media. We are Paleolithic creatures in a modern world, and the mismatch creates many of our contemporary problems. Obesity, anxiety, depression, social isolation. These can partly be understood as Paleolithic bodies and minds, struggling with environments radically different from those we evolved to navigate. But we also inherited Paleolithic strengths. Incredible adaptability. We can learn new skills, adjust to new environments, solve novel problems. Resilience, the ability to endure hardship and keep going even when conditions are terrible. Creativity, finding innovative solutions to challenges using whatever resources are available. Social intelligence, the capacity to cooperate, communicate, and coordinate with others to achieve shared goals. These traits, forged in the crucible of Paleolithic survival, enable modern achievements. Every time you push through difficulty, you're drawing on Paleolithic resilience. Every time you solve a problem creatively, you're using Paleolithic intelligence. Every time you cooperate with others toward a common goal, you're enacting Paleolithic social strategies. The Paleolithic also teaches humility. Modern humans, with our technology and comfort, often assume we're fundamentally superior to our ancestors. We're not. We're the same species with better tools. Drop a Paleolithic human into the modern world as a child, give them modern education, and they'd be indistinguishable from anyone else. Take a modern human, raise them in the Paleolithic, and they'd be as capable as any of their peers. Intelligence hasn't increased significantly in tens of thousands of years. What's changed is accumulated knowledge, each generation building on the discoveries of previous ones. You know more facts than a Paleolithic human, but you're not smarter. You have access to written information, formal education, and technological tools. They had intimate knowledge of their environment, sophisticated practical skills, and lived experience in conditions that would destroy you within days. Respect is warranted. The Paleolithic humans who endured unimaginable hardship, who survived against predators and starvation, who maintained social bonds and created beauty in the midst of brutality, who loved and laughed and mourned and hoped, who passed down their genes and knowledge until eventually their descendants created writing and cities and everything that came after. They were remarkable. They were not primitive. They were sophisticated, adaptive, intelligent people facing challenges we can barely imagine with grace, courage, and ingenuity. They were your ancestors, and you carry their legacy in every cell of your body, every quirk of your psychology, every capability you possess. The modern world is comfortable, safe, and complex beyond Paleolithic comprehension, but it's built on Paleolithic foundations, human cooperation, tool use, language, art, all emerging during those long millennia when survival was never guaranteed and every day was a gamble against nature. When you feel overwhelmed by modern life, remember the Paleolithic. Your ancestors faced genuine daily threats to their existence and still found reasons to keep going. Your challenges, real as they feel, are different in kind. You have resources, options, and safety nets they never dreamed of. When you're frustrated by your body's limitations or quirks, remember they're adaptations that kept your ancestors alive. That tendency to store fat saved them during famines. That anxiety protected them from dangers. That need for social connection kept them within the safety of the group. When you marvel at human achievements, space travel, computers, medical advances, remember they're all expressions of capabilities that evolved during the Paleolithic. The same intelligence that figured out how to knap stone tools eventually figured out microprocessors. The same cooperation that enabled successful hunts eventually enabled massive construction projects and scientific collaborations. You wouldn't survive a day in the Paleolithic, not really. The skills are too specialized, the hardships too severe, the dangers too numerous. You'd be hungry, cold, frightened, and probably dead within a week. But your ancestors did survive, day after day, year after year, generation after generation. They endured so you wouldn't have to. They paid the price in suffering so their distant descendants could live in relative comfort and safety. Their struggles, their sacrifices, their resilience brought you the world you live in today. Honor that legacy. Remember what humans are capable of enduring. Appreciate both how far we've come and where we came from. The Paleolithic ended thousands of years ago, but it made us who we are, and its echoes resonate in every aspect of modern human existence. So the next time you're frustrated by traffic, slow Wi-Fi, or a delayed package, take a moment. Remember your ancestors who woke up cold and hungry, surrounded by things that wanted to kill them, uncertain if they'd survive to see another sunrise. Remember they still found ways to laugh, to love, to create art, to hope, to build the foundations of everything that came after. And then maybe, just maybe, your modern inconveniences won't seem quite so unbearable, because you carry within you the genes of survivors, of people who faced the worst the world could throw at them, and not only endured, but triumphed. That legacy is yours. Don't waste it on trivial complaints about first world problems. The Paleolithic is over. Thank whatever gods or chants you believe in for that. But it's also the foundation of human experience, the story of how we became us, the testament to human resilience and adaptability that continues to echo through every generation. You wouldn't last a day in the Paleolithic, but you don't have to. Your ancestors already did it for you, and they did it so well that their children's children's children, thousands of generations removed, could live in warmth and safety and abundance beyond Paleolithic comprehension. That's their gift to you. The only question is, what will you do with it?